This is going to be awesome. We got Michigan. We got Texas in Ann Arbor. Texas favored by 6.5 points. Big noon. It's on Fox. Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson on the call. I cannot wait for this one, man. Cannot wait for this one. This is one of those games that way back in like March, after we were starting to come off of that high that was the college football season, you start looking to the schedule ahead of you. Well, hey, what's week 1? What's week 2 look like? This is one of those games that you circled early on. You're like, oh boy, when that gets here, that will be special. Michigan fans, Texas fans, make sure you are subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. College football does not stop. We want y'all a part of it. Second thing I want to tell you, the Hard Count is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Now, Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Easy to withdraw your winnings, easy to play. All you got to do is pick 2 or more player projections. Select the more or less on those player projections. Got yourself a lineup, you're off to the races, squeezing the juice out of everything that is college football this season. Now, if you want to play, get yourself started with code HARDCOUNT. You play $5 in lineups, you will get yourself $50 in promo funds. Again, code HARDCOUnt, $5 in lineups, gets you $50 in promo funds. Let's have a great season. Back to the prediction. Now for Michigan, took care of business against Fresno State. Looks like it's the Davis Warren show for them, and I think there's still a lot of question marks around them. And I think a lot of those are well-deserved. Like I say, take care of business against Fresno State. They won the game. I don't think they looked all that dominant. I think they're still trying to get their footing overall as a football team with a lot of new faces in the lineup for them. But if you beat Texas, a team that's now in the SEC, a team that made the college football playoff last year and won the Big 12, a team that has one of the best quarterbacks in college football, one of the best head coaches in college football, I would argue one of the better rosters in college football, I think you get to stamp yourself as Michigan and say, hey, we're still one of those teams that you have to deal with in this landscape. We're still one of the big dogs. So a win against Texas at the crib would, in a lot of ways, I think, kind of start the playoff buzz around Michigan in a very, very real way with what they have ahead of them. Now for Texas, remember last year where Texas went to Tuscaloosa, and I'm not talking about the game. Think about all the talking points that were surrounding that football team as we were getting ready for that game to happen. College game day, and people are picking Alabama, and there's, an absolute scene out there on the quad in Tuscaloosa. We were actually at that game and at College game day for that one. But when Texas won that game on the road, that felt like the okay, we've arrived moment under Steve Sarkisian. And even more so, I think that provided a lot of belief internally for that locker room. They're like, okay, we are exactly who we've been saying we are throughout the course of this past offseason. For Texas, a lot of the same faces that went to Tuscaloosa are still on this roster. But I think for them in this new year, like this game could be what last year's Alabama game was for them on the road, week 2. Should be a great environment, big brand. It'll be fun. So for Texas, a chance to kind of get the party started in 2024. Keys to the game here, man. We always break it down from a football perspective, kind of a schematic perspective, if you will. Texas and Steve Sarkisian, if you know anything about Sark's offense, man, he loves the RPO. And you've heard a million different color analysts trying to explain to you the run-pass option. You already know what that means. But essentially, Texas, what they want to do to be able to throw the football is run the football. So can they put the R in the RPO? They ran the football well last week. I think Jaden Blue proved to a lot of the college football public that he's going to be able to carry the load. But the question in this one now, Michigan's, I believe, strength of their defense is in the interior. Pete Thamel a couple of weeks ago came out and said he believes Florida State is the best defensive line in college football. Now, since then, it has been proven untrue, and honestly, when he said it, I didn't disagree. But you look at Michigan, what they have in the interior, they have a pretty strong case to make for themselves as one of the best defensive lines in college football. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, they were flying around was that defense. And so for me, the question is, can Texas get enough going on the ground to where they can then set up some of those shots downfield? And if they can, well, that shifts the conversation then. Because then we're asking, okay, well, can Texas as a whole and that wide receiver core win consistently enough against those Michigan DBs? Now, there's the names that you know. Will Johnson, who's, I think, arguably, if not definitively, the best cornerback in college football. The battle with him and Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden, like that's going to be one that I think is box office kind of stuff. And there's a couple of questions I have when it comes to like this battle. I think it's two-faceted. The first is man coverage. Because as much as, Michigan proved a point against Fresno State, holding them to what they held them to, and Will Johnson having that pick six to kind of seal the deal, there was a couple of snaps there where you're like, hey, Fresno State in man coverage, they won that rep. They didn't finish every single time, but they won enough of those to make you say, if Fresno State can win in man coverage, can Texas? Texas should have better wide receivers than Fresno State, have a better quarterback than Fresno State, and that's not me dunking on Fresno State. Those are just the facts. I also think that Michigan was probably pretty vanilla in their scheme against Fresno State, so what we saw from them defensively in that game I think will be very different in this game. I'd be curious to see how much safety help they provide for this wide receiver core against Texas. So that's the first part of this. Can you play man coverage against Texas? And if you can, well, guess what you get to do? Provide more resources to stopping the run. That safety gets to roll down a little bit more quickly. You get to fill a little more quickly. You get to be able to play more in the box against Texas, which, again, would put more pressure on the pass game. The second part of this battle between Texas and Michigan is what happens in space between Michigan and Texas. Texas has some yak monsters, from what I can tell. Isaiah Bond is great. Matthew Golden is great. Silas Bolden, we saw run with, it looked like some of the twos against Colorado State. We'll see if that's the case. They've got a lot of guys, though, to put it simply. Ryan Wingo had a big day. They've got a lot of guys to where if you get them the ball in space, they have a habit of winning. Okay, so for Michigan, you got to be able to play and be able to put it simply, you got to be able to tackle. You got to be able to get these guys on the ground, because if you can just quick game a team to death, like I think Texas will try to do at certain points throughout this game, and make that an explosive play, meaning you take a 3-yard slant route into a 35-yard gain and a first down, that's winning football. That makes Quinn Ewers' job a whole heck of a lot easier. So that's going to be huge. Watch that matchup. The matchup, I think, for Michigan when they have the football is their attitude getting downhill versus this Texas interior defensive line. Because last year, that was kind of the calling card for Texas. They got Tavondre Sweat. They got Byron Murphy. Those two dudes are All-Americans. They're gone in the NFL. That's the problem, though. They're gone to the NFL. Texas, as much as I believe in what they have on the defensive line, they're going to have their work cut out for them. Because if we know one thing about Michigan, doesn't matter if Jim Harbaugh's there, doesn't matter if Blake Corum's there, they are going to run the football and attack you. Not just for the first quarter. When Michigan starts breaking open those wide runs, those runs that go for 40, 50 yards, usually happens in third, fourth quarter where they've worn you down. So my question is, can Texas bring enough to the party to be able to force the game onto Davis Warren? Because Davis Warren now, as good as I think he can be for Michigan, I'm curious what they ask of him in this game. Because I fully expect Texas, again, to sell out, to stop the run. When that happens, you put the ball in 16's hands and ask him to push it downfield. Not saying he can't do it, but I do think that's the world you want to live in if you're Texas. Make the first-year starting quarterback in his second game as a starter try and beat you. Curious to see, too, if there is struggles offensively for Michigan, do they give Alex Orji a few more snaps? You would hope in a game like this, you toss the keys to QB1 Davis Warren and just kind of let him ride, play through his mistakes, whatever it may be. But curious to see how much margin for error they allow him early on in this game. Now, here's the other thing. This, to me, screams a pace game. Screams pace game. Whoever controls the tempo of this game, I think, has a more than decent shot at winning it. And what I mean by that is Michigan, they want to make this a wrestling match. They want to make it slow, methodical, got you in a sleeper hold, wore out there for 5-6 minutes at a time, 10, 12 play drive. Quinn Ewers, you got to watch a lot of this one. We want to play this game in the teens and the 20s. If that happens, I think Michigan feels pretty good about their chances if they can slow the game down. Now, to be honest with you, the game may end up in the teens and 20s just because of the sheer fact that I think Michigan will slow the game down overall. So we'll see how many possessions Texas gets to begin with. But Texas, they want to play like an MMA, a boxing kind of style of game where they're trading haymakers, quick strike, force you to keep up with them. That would be the kind of game that I think Texas wants to play. Now, also I'll say this. Within that whole pace that Texas wants to play at, Michigan could be very much so feast or famine in the way they try to attack him. Wink Martindale, formerly a DC at the NFL level, He is known for trying to bring complex pressures and make quarterbacks uncomfortable in that sense. Quinn Ewers, going into his third year as a starter at Texas, this is the game now where you need to play like a third-year starter at Texas. Played great last year on the road in Tuscaloosa. I think that experience serves him well in this game. But if Michigan's able to kind of rattle his cage a little bit, wreak some havoc, create some turnovers, things could get very, very interesting in Ann Arbor. All right, so keep an eye on that and how he handles a lot of the window dressing from that Michigan defense early on, because they were vanilla last week rather. They will not be vanilla in this game with the Michigan defense. If Texas can't stop Michigan's run game, it's going to be a very slow death. Again, it'll be just grind it out. It'll be Mullings. It'll probably have some Orgy sprinkled in there. It'll be a lot of Edwards. Like, it will be a vintage Michigan win if Texas cannot stop the run. However, I think that Texas and their experience in this situation, having played in big spots, especially Quinn Ewers having won on the road, having won the Big 12, having played in the college football playoff game, even if he lost it, I think that probably helps him in this situation, having played under those bright lights. I think the quantity of Texas weapons on the perimeter, as good as Will Johnson is, as good as Zeke Berry is, I cannot get out of my mind the wins one-on-one in man coverage that Fresno State got last week against Michigan. Would not shock me in the slightest if Michigan found a way to get this done. That feels like it would be the most Michigan thing of all time. Just everyone's counting them out and they find a way to get it done. However, I think overall the matchups to me favor Texas. I think the flow of the game favors Texas. The experience favors Texas. For that reason, I'm taking the Horns to go into Ann Arbor and get a win 24-17. So we'll take Texas to win by a half point. If you can get it 6.5, we'll take Texas to cover, and we'll roll that way with it. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.